Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good. It's been pretty heavy lately, so I'm gonna make a little video um, talking about the same thing in a different way, as always. And in this particular video, I want to talk about the concept of, well, in the Greek vocabulary, they use it, they call it Archon or Aeon. Archon or Aeon. And these two structures are very important. They basically the matrix for whatever else happens, and it can only be either Aeon or Archon, either something that is made out of dark or maybe something's made out of light. Universal mind, hive mind, um, and then you can use any kind of other vocabulary if you want to name those two things any other way. But those are real structures of consciousness. And the Aeon is something that at the base of your soul, whenever the logos and eros are in a complete alignment and unison, you got this field called Aeon. And it feels like peace and bliss, like I've always been talking about. Now, the Archon side of it is when they are not connected and disconnected, and it creates a distorted pattern, which is the seed of all the negative feelings. Okay, now the reason I want to talk about this is because I think this is at the basis of everything, right? I'm not that interested in dealing with the like consequences of things. I'm interested in dealing of like the root cause of everything that happens, the base of everything. Because if you plant the right seed, you get the right fruit, right? That just makes sense. And this is why I want to keep my videos sort of like about mostly about this essence, and maybe going a little bit more into the second step. But I want to, honestly, I just want to clarify that um, because just realizing of how consciousness is structured can be a bit like a big help. For example, um, any thought that you have, or any negative emotion or negative thought that you have, stems from this archonic structure. And it happens whenever you don't have those two parts, so yin and yang, logos and eros, that are connected here, in your soul. And there's nothing else that you can do. Some people ask, like, hey, do I have a free will? The only free will you have is to choose whether you act from the Aeon or Archon. That's pretty much the choice that you have. And this is why when people are acting from the Archon, which is most people in the Matrix, the problem with that is that, first of all, they're not unique. They act like automatons, and they don't have any kind of uniqueness. What they do have is predictability, same patterns of dysfunction, the same all boring thing. Like you can name every single behavior. You can basically have demonology, if you will, and if the person is acting from it, you know exactly what kind of a behavior they do it. they do and why and where it's coming from. It's like the most boring thing ever is the Matrix that stems from this hype Archon mind. It is the most boring thing ever. It doesn't have any life. This is why um, often if people interacting with me doubling down on their ego and they begin acting from that dysfunction, I can immediately see that, like, okay, that the soul is kind of went offline, and so then there's this NPC is now dealing with me, and it's like very boring to me. It's like I don't have anything to say. What do you say to the non-player character? If I need to buy a widget or whatnot, then yeah, you talk to them, but otherwise they're just you know default answers um, and default behaviors. So, and you can't really kind of blame them for anything. Once they are acting from that mode, that's it. Like they in the train of thought, and um, someone else may snap them out of it, of course. Um, but then again, we're talking about this idea of young souls and old souls, and sometimes people say old soul, young soul, and I think that really what they mean is the soul that has internal capacity to alchemize this energy. So when you are under influence of this archonic energy, which has been happening for the last like a week or so, can you alchemize it? Can you still reconnect your eros and logos through your awareness and attention, courage or surrender, another way of saying it, to reconnect those two energies back into the center, to have the basis of peace and bliss again, despite that archonic force trying to separate those energies. Now, if you have this capacity, then you can call yourself an old soul. But I don't like that word old, because you're not old at all. In fact, actually, you tend to have um, like very young. I don't know why people call old souls, but you tend to have very young presence, and that's due to direct result of you able to alchemizing those energies that normally causes degeneration. So you're rejuvenating yourself uh, and keeping very young appearance naturally. Okay. So, and it appears that we do have some souls who have capacity for the alchemy or devotion, as I call it, because I kind of split those two things in two categories, and I made a video before talking about the difference, and I can just briefly mention that difference. And the difference is that whenever challenge arises, whenever that feeling arises, that test comes along, there's two ways of dealing it. One is facing it and going into it, and I have to say, it feels like you using your willpower to keep your heart open despite a natural tendency of wanting to clamp shut, uh, because what is being felt is so horrid. But with that willpower, you keep that open, and then you add a little bit of like relaxation, surrender, and then this way you alchemize that energy. Now, um, yin and yang is kind of hinting about this, because white, which would be the courage, has a black dot, and so that's why it can be 100% courage without a little bit of surrender, and vice versa. You cannot have 100% surrender without a little bit of courage. And so that brings me to um, the next. Jungle is making noise. That brings me to the next, surrender. And so with the surrender, when that challenge arises, it's the opposite. You don't go in there and you don't force your heart to be kind of open like that, right? Even though it has, or it has a sort of habitual tendency to kind of close, you are keeping it open. And there's some effort required until that stabilizes. And it does feel like you are kind of moving into that energy, which you would normally kind of avoid. So you kind of pierce through it, right? So that's like a courage. And it does feel like it's a piercing type of attention. Okay. Now, with surrender or awareness, the same test may be happening, but you're not going into it, not trying to break through it. You are just giving as much space as possible, and you're basically saying that I am the background of it, I'm not it. And so you give that, you know, uh, compassion energy, and then so that's why the courage would be passion, and then surrender would be compassion. Okay, and so that would be the feminine way of dealing with that archonic uh, energy. Okay, and like I said before, people tend to um, sometimes through, again, not through their own guidance, not through their own inner guidance, and everything I'm talking about is you're supposed to be just like a guide or a manual of consciousness, uh, and hopefully using that manual of consciousness you can see what you can do with it. But I do recognize that this isn't for everybody, and maybe some of you are listening, it's more like a cool, really, oh awesome, it's entertainment kind of thing, and some of you are actually going through these experiences and you need some tools, these basic tools to deal with those energies. And so, and here you are, you know, that's that the essence. Now, and every time you alchemize it, and as a rule of thumb, when these tests come along, they kind of push you to the limits, and it does feel like you won't be able to do it, but you and but you can. It's this type of like, you know, um, I don't know how they say it, but like nudging or edging or whatever you want to call it. But there's this pushing an envelope, I suppose sometimes people say it. Trailblazing, another thing. It always comes in as something that, oh shit, I won't be able to handle this stuff. But you always can, and you can, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, it just has that tendency, that trick to tell you that, like, hey, this is like too big for you, but it's a lie, and it's not. Well, anyway, okay, and if you do this like once and you see that, like, okay, there was this state of consciousness that was kind of horrid, but you didn't look away from yourself looking for the solutions or whatever. You actually went in there and turned everything off and say, right, I'm just gonna be with this because it is what it is right now. Okay, let's alchemize, you know. And you can do this, and sometimes, you know, it's you spend like a few hours just feeling all of that. Hopefully, not like in a boring way. Like you can sit outside, you know, or even go for a walk, or like still do something functional, yet as long as it does not distract you from putting attention there. I like to sit outside, you know, in my garden. Sometimes walk or gym. Sometimes if I work out in the gym, and if I have my full attention on this, it does help. Um, but it's in a gym is more difficult to alchemize energies than um, because there's also some distractions, but it's possible anyway. Uh, but the message of this video is that there's only Aeon or Archon that can be in charge of the reality. Okay, and if you are under in charge of Archon, then everything's going to be gloomy, everything's going to look kind of hopeless, and blah 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 blah, because that's what it's creating. And if as you alchemize that and you access the Aeon state of consciousness, which is um, a certain peace and bliss from where nice feelings stemming from, then automatically the world looks different, right? And so you create that world different. You see the importance of this? It's a complete and total importance. If you handle this, then the rest of it is going to be easy. And yeah, and for other people around you may seem like you are just like a son of a bitch, but they don't know what you've been through to earn that luck, and that's all right. And that brings me to another side of the young souls. And young souls, they don't have this capacity, and they are just basically going to act based on which influence they have. Okay, and that's why the young souls are not really blamable, because they're like kids. If you create a tyrannical structure, then they're going to be like imprisoned. If you create you know benevolent structures, then the souls are just going to be playful and creative. So there's going to be like a garden of souls or a prison of souls. But they don't really can do nothing about this, you see. And they, and sometimes they play games, and they may even you see, like they may even imitate those processes that are really going on through their kind of imagination, but there's nothing really going on. It's just at in the imagination level. It's just like it's not at a causal level. This is what I'm trying to say, that they're not really changing or causing anything. They're just within their degree of freedom creating, playing with their illusion, right? But then it's not really changing anything. The only thing that can change anything is in the causal reality, and it's a soul. And this is super basic over there. It's either going to be the Aeon or Archon matrix in charge. Okay? So when we know this, then like you don't ask for these people to do something that they're not capable of. At first I was kind of annoyed, as like, why people can't do this, um you know and I don't know, like, again, it's just my observation that some people not only can do this, but they are very, very curious and interested in this type of stuff. And yes, it is feels, or these types of souls is basically like, sometimes I jokingly say it's like a spiritual BDSM. Why would you sort of like voluntarily go into the fire, so to speak? um Okay. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that don't ask for the kids to be adults. They do have some degree of freedom of what they can do, but it's usually to do like if you create a good structure, they're just gonna create and play. That's all they want to do, and most souls are like that. And even what people call stars, like really they just want to create and play, and that's it. But sometimes like they go under the structure that is kind of super dysfunctional, and then they create and play, and they create some art and whatnot, and someone else makes all the money, and they have to kind of almost like a sell their soul because they say, well, you can't do this unless you do this, and say, well, I really want to publicize my work. So then they sell their soul, they create something, you know, not exactly how they want it. Sometimes there are exclusions, and if they can negotiate, so they're capable of negotiating, you know, and some people can maintain their soul while uh, uh, playing this like creative game. But you see, that's the thing that like most of the time, Matrix just eats those young souls, and even though they are could be at the peak of their career, but they feel like shit because they under that regime, under the tyrannical regime, and they don't even know that they are, and everything looks so weird. So anyway, um, and so yeah, if you create that type of environment, that's what's going to happen with these souls. Create another environment, that's what's going to happen. So and so if we don't address this, the seed level, the causal level, then everything else is kind of doesn't matter, right? It's just a show and theater, and just how the story is going to go depends on what energy is in charge, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. What else I can I say? What else I can say about this? Ah, right. I have to say something because that energy, the Archon energy, is like I said before. It's an invasion of logics into your psyche. It's basically backwards flow of energy. It's when your a logical mind flows in a backwards manner. When the thoughts are supposed to be focused on the external world, that process is reversed and starts judging the feelings, right? And it says, "Oh, this feeling is bad. This feeling is good. So when it's doing that, it's not letting it be as it has to be. This is why Krishnamurti was talking about choiceless awareness. He was trying to say that basically the the flow of that energy, that thought energy, flows in the right way, and so there's no judging in the world of feelings. Everything is okay because it is. But when there's an interjection of that logics, which is always dissects things, it just fragments something and then says, "Oh, this feels bad," and so that it does feel bad only because it said label it as bad. So as you can see, there's this specific motion of energy that creates what you would call archon or ego. Again, just other words. Okay, and so whatever helps a person not to have that backwards energy flow of thought, it's okay to do. And so, for example, if you or if a person is not capable of alchemizing these energies, that's all right. But that person is probably going to have to, uh, first of all, be careful what kind of environments they're choosing to be in. That's the first thing that they have to choose. Say, okay, can I choose a better environment for me to be in, where people are basically more based on the light rather than the matrix, right? So that's the first thing. So because whatever environment you're going to end up, that's what's going to determine the rest. And then If you apply that thinking that's usually like backwards internal thinking, you apply it on a specific tangible task, uh, some work that you do, right? Whatever that may be, just place your uh, thinking about the tangible thing, not intangible. And when that motion is there, the mind is happy because you're not trying to shut it down because it's made to do something, made to move, but you're letting it do what it's supposed to do. And that is, you know, navigating this world. So, this is why engagement in some sort of activity that engages the thinking mind is very important. That's why I don't know people are thinking, excuse me, people are saying that like, oh, stop thinking. No, you don't want to become a vegetable. You don't stop thinking. You just um, switch the direction of thought. There's nothing wrong with thinking, but if you're thinking about like, oh, what do I need to buy in the shop or whatever, then that's just perfectly fine. It's not nothing wrong with that thought. But if you're the thinking says like, oh fuck, this feels really bad, or um, I have to do something about this feeling, that's when it's doing its thing and labeling and uh, creating that problem there. It's not supposed to be doing that. So this is why, like, if a person is engaged in some creative process that they like, and that creative process is not blocked, right? It's allowed to be kind of expressed in this playful and creative process. That usually is enough for not to flow backwards and not to go into dysfunction again. Okay, and and so it appears that like these types of souls are here to create and play, and that's it. They don't care about anything else. As long as you give them opportunity to create and play, they'll be happy. But the only way they can create and play and continue that process, um, and be allowed to express themselves as they are, not to become a robot, is if you give the environment. And so now, so you say like, well, what provides the environment? And what provides the environment are the people who alchemize the energy. And honestly, like, if you, it's like this: if you find yourself that, or suspect yourself to be this type of soul, that your work is alchemizing energy, then it's your responsibility. And every time you don't alchemize the energy and you pacify whatever, you will see those results in the world, um, that you're not going to like, and everybody else is going to be affected by it. Because that's the only true point of power that you have as an alchemist over the reality. If you do your work, if you do your job, then these souls that are here to create and play, which may include you also, which actually does, because you're not only just here to alchemize the energy, you're also to create something and play. But um, but if you do it right, what you will find is that the conditions or circumstances of the world keeps getting better and better. It doesn't change overnight and just you say like, oh, it's now everything's perfect and amazing, but you will see that things getting better, and that is enough. As long as you alchemize the energies and you see things getting better, and they are, if you alchemize the energies, um, that's the experience that you will have, and this will provide more freedom for the creativity and playfulness of the souls, and less sort of like a curbing their enthusiasm, which what Matrix does. Matrix does not want them to be, free. Matrix wants to use them, um, and put them on a some, like, you see what I'm trying to say? Okay, I'm just trying to paint a picture that is super basic and simple, and how it actually works, and how everything else is a noise. Okay, again, I'm just using words, but that's how it all works. Okay, um, and what I found out that not everybody is going to be an alchemist, but some people, or it might be that almost everybody, whether you're young or old soul, is capable of tuning in to that state of consciousness of peace. Um, but it appears to me that somebody has to be already in that state of peace for another person to be shown that, hey, uh, like, what's going on when you can't use words, or you can't use thoughts. What's going on right now in this moment? And that allows a person to kind of sink in to that deliciousness that's going on right now. It's very deep peace, and sometimes it's scary because it's sort of, it may be like unfamiliar, because it's like so quiet, so still, that some people may be scared of that. But if you encourage them and it's okay, and that they see that, like, hey, you're fine, then they can move to that stillness, and it's like, wow. And there's no problems over there. And you can call this Virgin Mary void or whatever, and you don't have to do practice or anything. Anyone can tune to that state. But I've noticed that not anyone can alchemize the energies, which is very different. Because alchemy of the energies is the actual um, permanent and total, complete, and a global change of uh, content of consciousness, if you will. And it's has a massive impact and consequences. Okay, but that 0 point, anybody can tune to it, as long as somebody is in that state. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Uh, there's something else I want to say. 1 second. Well, maybe I'll remember as I'm talking. Okay, so that's the gist of it. Archon or Aeon determines everything else. Ah, I remembered. Now, I'm just gonna say something that, if you see it this way, it may give you, it may release you of certain type of strife that it was not necessary for you to feel. And that is about the evil. Okay? As I said before in the previous videos, most people don't know what they're doing because they're not the ones who are creating the evil. They just are part of the hive mind, uh, and depending on how deep into that hive mind they are, they're doing the things that, it's a program, right? So they're not even aware of what they're doing. Sometimes people have good intentions to do good, but they're not doing good, and they're causing havoc, but they don't know that's what they're doing. So they're like involuntarily evil, and so that's why it creates kind of like peculiar situation, because like you kind of want to keep them responsible, but at the same time you see, like, fuck, they couldn't help it. It's just like they're like a robot, and they're doing these things, and if you put them in other conditions, and they're totally okay and fine, um, but yeah, it creates this little problem. But of course, then the culprit is placed on whoever is voluntarily and deliberately creating evil. And so, if the alchemist is somebody who is weaving those energies back together, eras and logos, then, and so you can call it like a white sorcerer. Then the 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 real evil would be the person or the soul. Uh, Actually, has to be the soul. It's not an entity. They create entities, but it's a soul, and they are, you can call them black sorcerers. Again, you can call them whatever you want, but they're the sorcerers. But you see, the thing is that the white is trying to weave the energy together. The black is trying to separate the energy apart. But that's been agreed upon. That's been agreed upon. The dark side, there are a certain number of souls that are on a specific time cycles are doing these, you know, ritualistic magic rituals, of or whatnot, for the purpose of to split that energy out, and then that creates a challenge for the white sorcerers to weave that energy back together. And this little process may be important, uh, and it also shows that what is important is the balance. It's not that, um, if of course, if the dark side takes over, that's the problem. But if the white side takes over, then that's okay. But it doesn't mean that it has to be, like, in completely and totally in control. It just has to have the majority of influence. It has to have the upper hand. Which means, and if it does, then the trajectory and of the planet is that of moving towards the resolution into, you know, uh, it creates an appearance of the planet evolving and consciousness growing in people and stuff like that. But it's just an appearance, because these souls are not actually doing anything. Like, you can say that, well, they are the ones who are doing something to evolve, right? No, it's just like the global energy is in improving, improving, and everybody seems to be, getting better and better and better. That's what's really going on. No, this thing is that somebody's doing something to evolve in the theory of the world is not true. There's an appearance of evolution. It's just like, like, is the tree doing a lot to grow? No, time goes by and the tree grows. The same thing with souls here. But the only people who actually have the impact on this is the alchemists or the sorcerers. And I just have a theory that there's only 144 of these individuals. It's just my theory, based on like the way consciousness is structured and the math of it. And I also have uh, the idea that those 144 souls, and if you're scared of this number and say, like, that's really low number, if you look at the reality as through the holographic perspective, and it's like what you have experienced personally, because that is all there is, and you don't project what is outside of what your personal experience and how many people you've met who are alchemists, and you may say that, like, oh yeah, well, I met like 3 people. Yeah, exactly. And so that's totally normal, and it's not a lot of these. And they're not, I'm telling you, they're not some gurus sitting teaching, disciples and whatnot. They didn't. These are just the monkeys of the theater. It's they're not doing anything. They, um, and so that's why it kind of creates this thing. And sometimes, like in these books, they would teach people, uh, or they would say stories like somebody would come up with like some master, known master, or I suppose there's another word for the alchemist, and then they would say like, I don't have anything to teach you. There's nothing that I can teach you. Like, just go live your life, and that's all you're here to do. And I think that because they knew that you can't teach that soul these things, because that's not what they're here for. And so that's why they didn't have any kind of disciples or teachings or stuff like that. And I think this is like, like what I'm saying is criticizing a lot. But this idea, for example, that you can teach somebody to alchemize his energy, this is why, like, I've been watching these Krishnamurti videos, and what he's talking about, it makes sense to me. I'm experiencing what he's talking about when he says, like, hey, hold your suffering as a jewel. I know exactly what it means, and what's going on there. But then most of his audience had no clue. They were just there just to chill, and he was getting frustrated very often, trying to say that, like, hey guys, look at it now. And then they're just functioning in the memory, and they say, no, you look at it, don't say it because you learned somewhere, like, look at it now. And so he would get very frustrated. Why are they not seeing it? And I'm saying that I think that he may not have seen the fact that they can't. Few people can, and the rest can't. And they're just there to just bask in your energy. And you can't ask them to do anything else because they're just not capable of doing it. And they're just very nice people in the good energy, and maybe not so nice people in the bad energy. Again, I'm not saying something definite, but I'm saying something that I'm observing to be the case. And not that it's not that, like, um, I'm just what I'm saying. I'm just separating this. There's a theater of the world, which includes you also, and that pertains to you creating and playing and whatever whatever you like to do. And then there's actual what determines what kind of energy is going to be, and that is the only thing that determines the environment of the whole world. And as long as it's uh, getting brighter and brighter, and the trajectory is towards light, and that's basically directly a responsibility of the alchemist, because if the alchemist is not doing their work, then the world isn't getting better. And as the alchemists, more and more alchemists doing their work, uh, it forces these souls who are working to split the energy up to turn into the alchemists themselves. I'm almost certain that that's how it works. That these are not, you can say, well, we should eliminate those souls. No. What really happened is that this theater of earth been asked by the group of souls who has the capacity of architecture of the reality to create this dichotomy. And in Vedanta traditions, they call them suras and asuras. And there's the whole story, the whole legend to explain people of what's going on. And so there. Now, and that is very few people. Again, if you look at from the holographic perspective, you'll see that indeed there is a few people that you met that are like that, and there might be appearance of like just an appearance that that there's a lot of people who are, who are alchemists or can do that, but it's not true. It's not. This is why it's ridiculous for somebody, who's not an alchemist, even talk and mention, like, kundalini or this, and uh, they um, they may have some like little experiences, and and they call them these names, and my kundalini awakened and all that stuff. Most of the time, it's complete nonsense. None of this happened. It was just pure imagination, and it won't happen for them in this lifetime. And they could try and jump on their asses and whatever the fuck they're doing for 20 years, and it will not happen because they're not here for that. And the very fact that they're going in on this path and insisting that they have to be, this, what they seem to be an ideal, which is like some guru or the teacher, and they're trying to seek that ideal, that is actually an ego avoiding the responsibility of being a soul and playing the game as they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be perhaps be like, musician or whatnot, or martial artist, but they spend this fucking time in the ashram kissing some fucking guru's ass, and it will never happen. It is not for them, and it won't happen. They could be a very good musician, that's a great martial artist, and live a happy life, and never even fucking need to know about this thing called kundalini. This is why, like, it was a huge mistake for these real, alchemists. I call them alchemists, but sometimes people call them yogis, to to popularize this thing. Because if they know full well that this is bullshit and it's nonsense, and you can't teach this to people, then it creates just another theater, another show, right? And so they're just talking and saying things and doing things and everything, but nothing changes. It's just a theater, it's just a show, it's just the pixels moving around. Or even if they take psychedelics or whatnot, still, and some people call themselves like shamans and whatnot, and and I've been to these ceremonies. I went there and I saw that, like, there's nobody there. There is no shaman there. There's just nobody there. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're just giving drugs to people and playing some nice music. People get high, get connect with the whatever the energies they connect, and yeah, of course, they feel love and all of that stuff. And for the momentary, they think that, oh my god, they've been healed, and now they are like better than everybody else. and and the people who've done the ceremony now are very happy because now people are so grateful for them, and blah 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 blah. But they've done nothing. They just create a short-term experience, and then the people go back to their lives. The effect wears off, and usually as it wears off, it comes back even stronger. The ego comes back even stronger, and then they have all sorts of problems in their lives, and they lose their shit and they become psychotic. And this is the pattern. I'm not denying that there's some help. There is some help there, but it's not just taking drug, getting high, and that would be it. It what it can do is can just open things up for you and to see the reality as it is. But then later you just live your life, and as long as you create and play, everything's gonna be all right. And maybe you're not an alcoholic anymore. You're not drinking that much alcohol, or some addiction kind of went away because it changed into some occupation that you're doing right now. So that's all healthy, that's good, but that's because you have done something about your life, and the psychedelic may have opened the doors. But but it doesn't mean anything. You can do 14 ayahuascas and still slap Crystal Rock on a stage and be in completely dysfunctional relationships, with your wife. It's it's totally possible. That can happen. So so that's my little rant. Okay, but it's good news because you let people be people, and as long as the progression of like this is towards more towards better and better and better, everything's as long as it's getting better, everything's gonna be all right. And you gotta let some time to pass for things to change. And and honestly, like, don't bother with getting angry at these organizations that that, like corporations, or some people call it cabal or whatever. They are going to be dealt with automatically. It's like, as if you alchemize the energies, you rewrite the script, and as you rewrite the script, the event's going to be unfolding in a way that it's going to be cabal is going to be losing and whatever. But there's no need to be angry, because most of what's going on there is still just um, Muppets. It's a show, right? And if you want the dark side to lose, then you alchemize the energies, you change the script, and you see them appearing to be losing, because you don't actually see nothing. You just hear the stories that, which is like even more of a show, and the proof that, I mean, you see sometimes some consequences that is kind of dysfunctional, but still, like, do you see it, or you saw it on the media and somebody said that that's the case, you know? So like, most of your world is through the screen, and it's just a fucking screen. But like, how have you experienced, like, in your reality? And it's very unlikely that you have. So what the fuck are you doing, kind of getting angry about um, some cabal when you have not even seen it? So, and this is why I'm totally cool and chill about uh, the outcome of this game. That's it. The only way it can go wrong, if the alchemists kind of fall asleep and don't do their work. And um, that's another thing that I'm trying to say here. Something that even like when people call like dark night of the soul or stuff like that, um, it is just a period of in your life that it may be tough, but as long as you push through, and it's not really like that you do need to do anything about it. uh, Arrange your life where there's sort of like minimal and quiet and everything, and sort of minimalize your life, less noise and whatnot. And as long as you just live through it, that's all you gotta do. There's nothing else that you gotta do. And if you can tune to the 0 point, then that's all you gotta do, and that's it. And it may appear that you have done something, but in reality, is you have not done anything. So I'm just separating like the experience of this reality and the factors that actually creates this reality. Okay. Um, so yeah, and people do what the people do, and they will do what people do, and that includes obviously you. Even if you alchemize energies, um, which actually does have an impact on not just you personally, but globally too. You still are part of the theater as well. So on that plane, you're just playing things. You can't control anything. You're just playing your character, and that's it. And whatever the character is, you just play it, and that's your soul's expression, and that's it. And it may appear that you're doing something, but it's just happening. You're not doing anything. But I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say, even if you're an adult soul, you're also a child. You're also still here to play and create and have fun. You just have an adult responsibility as well. That's it. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that simplifies things. Hopefully you don't feel like you got to uh, stress about it. Okay? Stress is basically an effect of this archonic force. So every time you're stressed, every time you're fearful, every time you're um, in that type of state of consciousness, do your best to get out of that state of consciousness and into the good state of consciousness, and be under the influence of Aeon, not Archon. Because it is very tricky. It can take you in. And I know sometimes when we're like, fuck, why am I so um like what you call it, irritable, It's like, what the fuck? And so I'm like, okay, where's it coming from? Boom, alchemize it, done. But I can feel it. It's trying to seep into the reality. Because like that irritation or that anger or that rage or whatnot, it doesn't really do anything any good, and it's only like you can see it as a good fuel to alchemize to actually into the light that actually does something. The fire is not really um, uh, doesn't have that much power, but like a laser focused energy has real power, right? So you use that energy of frustration, anger, rage for the purpose of alchemy, to turn that into organized energy that feels like bliss. And then you trust that that energy is going to make things right, because it will, because that energy is logos and or orgon. It will organize things in your life. And don't even worry, even the global events, even everything's going to be organized as long as you are the closest to that peace and bliss. That's the only um, sort of like your um, responsibility. And from there, if you're peaceful and blissful, awesome emotion stemming from there. And that's usually can manifest as you creating something, playing something, whatnot. And that's the only thing that you got to do here. Just chill. All right, guys. I'll see you next one. Peace.